Welcome back to Rico and Hook, the new #1 sports talk show here on Wayne Hills TV.
Big signings and trade rumors around the world of baseball are causing the hot stove to catch fire. NFL season is closing. Hook and I will be making our predictions from around the world of sports, and we're bringing you sports news from around the world. I'm Rico.
And I'm Hook, and this is Rico and Hook.
To start off, a couple of big signings around Major League Baseball. So let's talk about it. First, let's talk about Dansby Swanson, big contract to the Cubs.
It was about 7 years, over $170 million. Swanson, in my personal opinion, was the best shortstop in all of baseball this last season. So, I'm not surprised that he got a big contract like that. I thought he was going to get some more money, potentially yearly at least, because, we saw guys like Correa, we saw guys like Turner with big contracts, and now to see Swanson kind of signed, not really pennies on the dollar, but compared to these other shortstops, it was really a cheap contract. So I'm just happy he got out of Atlanta. He now has a chance to be the #1 guy on a team, but I'm surprised he didn't get as much money as the other shortstops on the market. What do you think?
Many people see him as like an average shortstop when it comes to hitting. Like, he doesn't really hit for power like you see like a guy like Correa or Bogarts do. He doesn't hit a lot of home runs every year, but his defense is obviously one of the best in the league. That's what he's known for. He does hit for average very well.
We saw guys like big signings. Carlos Rodon was one of them that I personally was very happy about. 6-year deal to the New York Yankees. How do you feel about that contract that he's just signed?
He's going to look really good in the Yankees rotation with Garrett Cole, Nestor Cortez, and now him. 2 really good pitchers, all-star caliber pitchers that the Yankees really do need. Just to keep talking about the Yankees, they really haven't added anything to the lineup. Basically, it looks like it's going to be the same team from last year, like subtracting a guy like Andrew Benintendi. How do you think they're going to fill that void?
It's definitely going to be tough. I'm very happy about the Rodon signing. Great lefty pitcher, brings a lot of energy to New York. But, we lost a lot with Andrew Benintendi. Hits for contact, an amazing fielder. It's going to be interesting to see what they can do. Obviously, they've been talking about Brian Reynolds. They've been talking about potentially moving Oswaldo Cabrera to left field, but I'm not 100% sure. There are guys like, Reynolds, like Max Kepler, like Michael Conforto that they could eventually go after. But right now it seems like Brian Cashman, and I like what he's been doing this offseason, so I am trusting him this offseason. I think he's definitely going to make the right choice when it comes to left field.
Yeah, and then to stay in the division with the Red Sox, they lost one of their big bats, J.D. Martinez, who was there for a couple of years after being with Detroit prior, signs with the Dodgers. To me, it just looks like he's going after a ring, but he is still a very good hitter in the league now.
Los Angeles, one of, if not the biggest sports cities in the world. It's kind of up there with New York City. So, I'm not surprised that of all teams, a guy like J.D. Martinez, he's about 34, 35 years old, getting to the end of his, career, but still a great hitter all around. I'm not surprised that he moved to a team where he can really ensure his chances of winning a World Series, especially after the, disappointing season that the Red Sox just had.
Yeah, the Red Sox, in the past couple of years, they won their World Series and been in it every year, but this past year, they just did not look that good. Didn't look like the normal Red Sox. I don't know if that makes sense, but they just didn't look like the team that they always are, really competitive. Just wasn't that good this year. And then with the Mets and their catcher situation, I know you know a lot about that. Apparently they have, 4 catchers over there?
So they just signed Omar Narvaez, former Brewers catcher. A bit of an interesting deal. So he is a defensive-minded catcher. They already have a few defensive-minded catchers with Tomas Nido already on the roster. Obviously, they have James McCann, who last season really stuck out like a sore thumb for them. They have the rookie Francisco Alvarez. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what they do with 4 catchers. That is a lot. Usually teams like to platoon 1 or 2. But, it's going to be interesting to see. I think Alvarez would make a great DH, especially with how much power he has in his bat. I think they're going to end up potentially getting rid of James McCann, and I think, Narvaez and Nido are going to be 2 great guys that they can have platoon, especially being 2 great defensive catchers.
Yeah, but that definitely is a Mets thing to do, to have 4 catchers on your roster just at one time. I'm not surprised they would do something like that when they need help, mainly like everywhere else, besides their pitching spot where they did sign Verlander this offseason. But I think that just about does it for our Major League Baseball segment. Don't go anywhere. The start of the NFL playoffs are a few weeks away, and the playoff picture is getting more and more competitive by the week. Our segment on the NFL when we come back.
Welcome back to Rico and Hook. Next up, we have our segment on the NFL. So a lot happened this last week 15, most notably the Los Angeles Rams, reigning Super Bowl champions, got kicked out of playoff contention. How do you feel about this? Such a great team.
I mean, when Baker Mayfield's your quarterback, what can you really expect? He has no success on like any of the other teams around the league. So, and then they've had Aaron Donald out for 2-3 weeks now. Obviously, he's the focal point of that defense. And more about Aaron Donald, there's rumors surfacing that he could retire. Obviously, last year at the end of the year, after they won the Super Bowl, there was a lot of rumors about that. So that could be something interesting in the offseason to see if Aaron Donald does decide to retire.
I mean, there's just such an overall great team. It was very surprising to see them, get eliminated from playoff contention so far. And another team that kind of been surprising me this year has been, Las Vegas Raiders. They just had a huge game against the Patriots. Big win off that fumble recovery, off the lateral from Jacoby Myers. I mean, how did you feel about the game, specifically that crazy ending?
Yeah, that might have been the funniest play I've ever watched. I mean, I just didn't understand what they were doing. Obviously, Jacoby Myers in his post-game interview was more upset, but still, I don't know how you make that mistake at the professional level. Threw it 20 yards behind him. Mac Jones has no shot against Chandler Jones, and the Raiders, I would call it a lucky win at the end, but it was much needed for them as a team.
I mean, yeah. I mean, such an interesting play to see. We've seen teams kind of utilizing the lateral plays like the Steelers. The Raiders have used it in the past as well. But the Patriots, it looked like they just had no idea what they were doing there and no formation going into that play. And Jacoby Myers just throwing it 30 yards backwards, trying to get it to Mac Jones, and then him just getting trampled by Chandler Jones was definitely an interesting play to see.
Yeah, and then let's throw it to your Jets, who just feels like the 2 times I have came on here, they lost.
We don't have to go that far.
Yeah, but it seems like they're always losing pretty much every week, especially when you have Zach Wilson back in at quarterback now.
It was tough. I thought Mike White was going to be our savior this season, and then, getting injured was definitely tough to see, especially with Zach Wilson coming back. Not really a fan of his so far this season, and, a very close game with the Lions. Overall, the Lions just outplayed us. I mean, the score won't show it, but the Lions were just the much better team this week, and I'm really not surprised that the Jets fell to them because, I mean, they just brought their all this week that the Jets really didn't.
Just sounds like a really good excuse for a bad team, but throw it to my Giants, how they won. A lot of people are saying that the refs really handed it to us this week, and I can't lie, yeah, we got a couple of favors.
Yeah, I believe that was 4-5 missed pass interference calls there. So
I wouldn't say they're missed, but
I believe a few tugging on the collars, few hitting on the helmets, but,
it's football. I don't see it. No.
Yeah, you didn't see it, but neither did the refs, did they?
Yeah. Giants now are ahead of the Commanders in the 6th playoff spot. Looks like they're going to play either the Vikings or the Bucs in the first round. Obviously, it's going to be interesting. And we do play the Vikings next week on Christmas Eve, so that's going to be an interesting game when the Vikings been struggling, but they did just create the greatest comeback of all time.
So, the biggest comeback of all time, 33-point comeback. They were down 33-0 against the Colts, led by Matt Ryan. So now that is the biggest Super Bowl lead blown by a quarterback, and now the biggest lead blown in NFL history by a quarterback. Matt Ryan has just been falling ever so steadily off, and now we've seen it this year. I mean, he just cannot command this offense, and, despite how good they were in that first half, the first 3 quarters, actually, because the comeback really didn't start until the 4th, I mean, the Vikings just outplayed them. They made them look like a peewee football team. So how do you feel about that last game?
I mean, I think Matt Ryan should just hang it up at this point. I think he had the success on the Falcons. Obviously, we talked about it. He's been made fun of his whole entire career when he went to the Super Bowl, loses a 28-point lead, and now he does this to the Vikings. I mean, you turn off that game at halftime thinking that it was going to be over, like the Colts are going to win, and then you come back in the 4th quarter in overtime when the Vikings are kicking the game-winning field goal. And now there's a couple games going on this weekend, Christmas Eve games, Christmas Day, and then let's talk about a Monday Night Football preview between the Colts and the Chargers. What are your opinion on that game?
I mean, I think the Chargers are just blowing the Colts out of the water here. I mean, Colts have a record of 4 wins, 9 losses, and a draw so far. Matt Ryan, like I said before, cannot command this offense. I mean, it's good to see that finally a Jets quarterback is no longer the laughingstock of the league. I mean, it was Geno Smith, Mark Sanchez, Tim Tebow, now Matt Ryan, so I can't complain about that. But, still, Matt Ryan he cannot command this offense, and I think that they're going to get trampled by the Chargers. So what do you think about this upcoming game?
I mean, Justin Herbert seems like up and down. A lot of people saw him as like an MVP candidate, like a Jalen Hurts. How Jalen Hurts performed this year, and actually Jalen Hurts might be out for this next week's game with a high ankle sprain actually, which it's similar to the Carson Wentz situation from a couple of years ago when Carson Wentz got hurt late in the year, and then the backup Nick Foles took over, and this year's backup would be Gardner Minshew. What do you think if that happens?
I mean, the Eagles are still such a great team, even without that quarterback in Jalen Hurts. I mean, you got guys like Devontae Smith commanding that offense too. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what they can do with a backup without Jalen Hurts, who I think is going to be the MVP this year. But, yeah, it's definitely a great question. But I think the Eagles are still going to be like they were before, just minus, such a great quarterback in Hurts. And that'll do it for our segment on the NFL. Don't go anywhere. Rico and I will give you our sports predictions when we come back.
Welcome back to Rico and Hook. Next we'll be talking about our sports predictions. So to start off, obviously the World Cup just ended, but let's talk about the 2026 World Cup. Who do you think is going to win that?
I mean, it's 4 years away, definitely far away. We really don't know, what teams are going to look like. But, it being in America, I'm going to go full patriotic here. I think USA is taking it all the way in 2026, especially, if that final is against our rivals over in England. I'm going with a score 1776-0. That's right. USA's taking it in 2026. We haven't lost since 1776, 1812, 2010, 2022. That is 2 wins and 2 draws. I think we're winning it all against England in the finals. What do you think?
I mean, you got to be realistic, like, a little bit.
That's pretty realistic to me.
Yeah, like,
Undefeated.
I agree with, like, the whole thing. Like, yeah, we beat them in the past
4 times.
4 times.
We won 0-0 against them in 2022.
But you don't win, though.
Yeah.
Isn't it a tie?
Next up on Rico and Hook. So, I mean, Lionel Messi, who just won the World Cup for Argentina, speaking on the World Cup, he has garnered interest from teams in both America and England. Obviously, his contract with Paris Saint-Germain is up after this next season. So, I mean, where do you think he's going to sign if you got to make your choice, England or America?
I mean, I think he should come to America. It'll bring, like, a lot of popularity to him towards the end of his career. Even though, like, soccer isn't the biggest sport here, it actually will bring some popularity for once. People talk about it, how it has, like, the most watched views, like 4 billion views for, like, the World Cup, and the Super Bowl only gets, say, 100,000. So maybe it will bring some more viewers here to the U.S.
I mean, yeah. I mean, he garnered interest from teams like NYCFC in New York City, Inter Miami over in Miami, Florida for the MLS, but also teams like Manchester City who had interest in him before his PSG contract. Teams like Liverpool have shown slight interest in Messi. I mean, he is the greatest player of all time, so he could definitely, bring a lot of popularity to both America and England. So, I mean, moving into a new sport, we had a chance to speak to a few students on their thoughts on the NBA, specifically their thoughts on who the NBA MVP was going to be. So let's roll that clip.
I think the MVP this year is going to be Luka Doncic.
I think the MVP is going to be Nikola Jokic.
So it was definitely interesting, seeing what all those students had to say about the NBA MVP. So next up, I mean, moving into another very cherished award in the NBA, the Rookie of the Year. We've seen some great players, bring up a lot of great stats overall in their first year so far. So let's see what a few of our students had to say about the NBA Rookie of the Year.
Rookie of the Year is going to be Pablo Banchero.
Jaden Ivey.
All right, so we've seen a few great teams so far. I mean, specifically, we've seen teams like the Pelicans, teams like the Celtics, who won the championship or lost the championship last year to the Warriors. So we had a chance to ask a few students on their thoughts on who the NBA championship would be won by in 2023. So let's roll that clip.
My finals prediction is going to be the Cleveland Cavaliers.
Boston Celtics.
That will end off our sports predictions segment. Don't go anywhere. Hook and I will wrap up the show with our segment on sports news from around the world when we come back. Welcome back to Rico and Hook. To end off the show, we'll be talking about news from around the world. So first off, Argentina won the World Cup. I mean, that was a really intense game. What do you think about the game?
I mean, France made a great comeback effort. I mean, that hat trick by Kylian Mbappe from France, I mean, 2 goals in a matter of a minute and 30 seconds is just so impressive. And to be able to end up scoring that third goal, tying it up, sending the game to free time, and eventually to penalties was just so impressive from him and that entire France team. Overall, I mean, I think Argentina just led that entire game. I mean, in penalties, you saw it. France only made one of theirs. So Argentina really just commanded that entire game despite the score. And I'm just not surprised that such a great team, won the World Cup, especially in such a close game.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard people say that's the greatest soccer game they've ever watched. Like, that's how serious this game was. Obviously, it's very passionate for many people, like, around the world. You see kids around the school. I've seen kids crying around the school, like, because their country and they're very passionate about the sport, like, because they lost. Don't start laughing about that, but
yeah, I've definitely seen a few students crying. I know Noah Sandler definitely shed a few tears once USA lost in the World Cup qualifiers. So, I mean, just sending one out to my boy Noah Sandler. I feel for you.
now let's talk about in the overall world of bodybuilding. Chris Bumstead won the Mr. Olympia competition. You really shouldn't be laughing about this. I don't understand.
I know nothing about it, so go ahead.
But he was in, like, it's an open competition. He won the Mr. Olympia. It's his 4th Mr. Olympia now. So he's probably on, I think he's going to win for the next couple of years and eventually be the greatest bodybuilder of all time. But I know many people don't have a lot of interest in that topic.
No, I certainly don't. I have no idea about it. The only bodybuilder I can think of off the top of my head is the Liver King, which garnered some controversy that I'm not going to get into now. But that's really all I know on the topic. So you're really the expert here, but moving into my expertise, we got basketball, we got the NBA. Nikola Jokic joined a very prestigious club recently with his big 40-point, 27-rebound triple-double game. I mean, he's one of just 3 players to record 40 points and over 20 rebounds in a triple-double in a single game. He has now moved to 6th place all-time in triple-doubles with his 81st. So overall, such an amazing player. He is, a 2-time MVP. So I think he definitely gives himself a chance to win it again this year, especially, you got players like Jason Tatum, players like Luka Doncic. But what Jokic is doing is really unmatched, and you can see a guy like him, he's 7 feet tall, he's a center, but still 6 all-time in triple-doubles, list kind of commanded by guards and forwards. It's really impressive to see what he can do, especially at his height.
Yeah, I don't watch much basketball, but I do know about him, back-to-back MVPs. You think he can win another MVP this year?
Certainly. I think he's top 5 right now in the ladder. I think it goes probably Tatum, Doncic. Then you got guys like Anthony Davis, who unfortunately is out for a month with an ankle injury. But I think Jokic is really right there. Obviously, Embiid too. But right now, big men are making a comeback for the first time since like the early 2000s, mainly because they have the skill set of a guard. Nikola Jokic is like, if Magic Johnson was a 7-foot-tall Serbian center. So it's really impressive just to see how he can do all this stuff at his height. And, speaking of basketball, we're kind of moving away from the NBA into high school basketball, which has started to pick up this recent season. 3 players from the state of New Jersey are ranked within the top 5 of the 2023 ESPN 100 class, notably DJ Wagner of Camden High School. He's committed to Kentucky, the number 1 player in the class. You got Mackenzie Mbako at Roselle Catholic. He's committed to my Duke Blue Devils. He's number 4 in the class. And then Aaron Bradshaw, number 5, also from Camden High School, and he'll be playing with his teammate DJ Wagner at Kentucky next year. So, it's really interesting to see, such great players from our state. It's potentially could happen that, if Wayne Hills basketball makes a deep run to the state playoffs, we could be playing against one of these guys. You never know what's going to happen. So how do you feel about such great talent coming out from our state?
Well, since this turned into the Hook Show and you just decided to talk the last 2 minutes, I think it's really great that we have a lot of good players that are coming out of the high school programs around here, and we have a few great players here ourselves that do play basketball for Hills. Obviously, we'd look for them to be on one of these top 100, top 200 lists. That would always be cool to see coming from your hometown school. But thank you for tuning in to this week's episode. We here at Wayne Hills TV wish you a good holiday break. I'm Rico.
And I'm Hook, and we will see you when we come back here on Rico and Hook.